I want to do marketing. I want to get sales. And they just dive into techniques without the strategy behind them or understanding what the metrics should be.
Who do you serve? What is it that you want to offer them? Where can they be found?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the morebusiness.com podcast. My name is Raj Khera, your host, and today I'm joined by Karl Boehm. He is the Chief Marketing Strategist at Spiral Marketing, which is his agency, and Karl knows a lot about how you drive business. Today's topic is going to be the B2B marketing playbook to get quick hits, and Karl is loaded with stories about how to get quick hits. Welcome to the podcast, Karl.
Thank you so much, Raj. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. Let's get started real fast. So let's start some quick hits, right? Let's go. Give me a quick hit because that's what people want to know.
Something I was thinking about, Raj, because one of the things I really like about you and I is a similarity is that we both play music. And, something that I've noticed, which is a quick hit for me, and just to resonate with, I think, some listeners, whether you're a musician or you just love music, is there's a big difference between music that is sort of put together haphazardly versus when there's a rhythm. And something that I've seen working really well for business owners and folks who are working on their marketing is starting to get into a rhythm about what kind of numbers need to be in sync. And a lot of that for us and for our clients has to do with simplifying their outreach. And a business owner, is so easy to lose perspective of what your numbers are, what your rhythm and growth should be. But truly, I don't think that there's any level of business professional that shouldn't at some point have a growth goal. And there are certain kinds of outreach that we do. Even Warren Buffett has to contact his partner and do some check-ins in order to work through growth. And I think a lot of CEOs, which I understand is mostly your audience, is going to be, they're going to consider themselves responsible at some level of growing the business, right? Whatever that means to them. If they're responsible for sales themselves, or if they are responsible for creating new partnerships, new venture deals. And what I'm seeing, and this is a pattern that I've been going through myself for the last year or so, and working with folks who are seeing really incredible differences when they hold themselves accountable to simplifying their outreach funnel and rethinking what their numbers should be so that they can actually do them and then consistently grow.
Yeah. I like what you said. It's really just like music. If anybody's watching this on video, you can see my drum set in the back. It's one of my favorite things to work on. And you've got instruments too. And so at the end of the day, you've got to really know what you got to bring in, right? So the rhythm that you're referring to is, okay, this month we need to bring in 100 leads, which will convert into 10 meetings, which will convert into 2 follow-up deals for contracts, and maybe we're going to close one of them. So you sort of have this funnel of what you need to know. And once you build that rhythm, you're going to start to see consistent growth. And that's one of the things I think a lot of people overlook is, I want to do marketing. I want to get sales. And they just dive into techniques without the strategy behind them or understanding what the metrics should be. I think that's a really critical part of it, is figuring out what those numbers should be.
There we go. And that's what we call business jazz, folks.
Yeah. Right. So a quick background. So Karl and I actually met a little while back. When he interviewed me for his podcast, I was at the time the executive vice president and chief marketing officer at a company called Wealth Engine, which was a fast growth company in the Washington, D.C. area. And I was brought in as one of the new executives to help grow it, to scale it, to turn it around and sell it, actually. And so that's what we did. And so we've kept in touch, and Karl's building his agency through a lot of the techniques that he helps his clients with. So Karl, can you give me an example of what maybe a smaller company can do to really just get started with marketing? I mean, first thing we got to figure out, right, is your process, your numbers, what your goals are. But sometimes that's even a little early for people. They just need to get their first 1, 2, 3, 4 clients. What would you recommend for somebody who's building an agency, building a consulting practice, building a coaching business, something that's an independent thing where they have to find clients for larger ticket items? We're not talking small product sales, e-commerce sales. I'm talking about like an actual consultant, an agency like you are. How do you find your first few clients?
Absolutely. Great question. And I think that this really does feed into the whole theme here, which is simplifying your outreach and looking at the number in a way that is very, so I want to make this very simple for your listeners because it's easy to overcomplicate things, and sure, everything can be evolved, but in terms of coming up with an outreach plan that's simple for you right now, this kind of exercise could be done on a napkin, right? So who do you serve? What is it that you want to offer them? Where can they be found? And how many people do you think you can sit down and outreach to in an hour, or however much time you have, but work with an hour? Because if you don't have an hour, then you probably need to make some adjustments to carve out some time for yourself. And then really intentionally go through the process yourself, as though you were going, even if you're a big business owner or a small one, you at some point, whether you delegate or you don't, you have the opportunity to go through the process yourself and work through the kinks and make sure that it does work before you delegate it or you fragment it into something, different, et cetera. But in the meantime, great example. If you're working on executive coaching, you might be reaching out to B2B executives and that are running startups. These are very targetable through LinkedIn. You're offering them coaching. Maybe you have a program where you're putting together a workshop that relates to B2B SaaS companies. And you could very easily go on LinkedIn, reach out to 10 people that are B2B SaaS founders, and send a LinkedIn request saying, hey, I thought that you might be interested in this workshop that I'm working on. Do you have 5 minutes to chat about it? And send 10 requests, see how many you connect with, and try to get a call and move them through that funnel. It's really as simple as considering how you can make new relationships and what you're able to offer them and being consistent with it. Something I always say is that marketing is an engine for growth. So you've got to keep putting fuel in there.
I like that you're leading with value. You're leading with something that's educational. I'm doing a workshop that you might be interested in, and you're sharing some of your expertise. Because the way, you probably get so many LinkedIn requests every week, every day. I wake up in the morning and there's so many people, hey, I'd love to connect. And so one of my recent posts is, I feel like every time someone wants to learn more about me, I feel like Charlie Brown about to kick the football that Lucy is holding. Because I'm all right, okay, I'll get to know, I'll accept the connection, and next thing you know, they are just selling me. So what I'd like to get to know you was really, I'd like to get to know how I can sell to you. That's really what they're saying. And so you get fooled so many times and you start to get gun shy. But when you lead with value, that's big. Because if you're leading with, hey, I think you might be interested in this workshop that we're doing. Now, suddenly, if someone says offering you attendance at a workshop or webinar or something, I like the workshop. That's a very nice word. That just feels a little bit more genuine because you're really giving somebody value. As long as all you do in the workshop is not just sell, you really provide some value.
Absolutely. And I think the specificity of the value and the offer that you're providing is super important, right? Mm-hmm. Because the more you niche down and speak directly to somebody and who they are, the more likely they are to pay attention. For example, if somebody says, Raj, I found you because I'm working on a program specifically for executive coaches who work on B2B SaaS companies, then it's probably going to get a lot higher up on your radar that somebody says, I'm interested in learning more about you.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I also find that if you teach people how to do something that's in your area of expertise, or you ask some very poignant questions that they can relate to and they can see their life unfolding in your question, that actually attracts them to you also. And so I find that sometimes that just is a really big thing. So one of the questions I asked people I remember when I was coaching my own teams, actually, that were reporting into me, and I had some people that were right around the same age bracket. And that's hard for some people, is when they're in the same age bracket as you to actually like you're their boss. Sometimes people have a little challenge with that. Not everybody, I mean, just sometimes. And I remember one of the people I talked to, I said, hey, have you ever felt that all the activities you're working on sort of make you feel like you're spinning some cycles? Like you'll be working in the evening, you'll be working a weekend, and you just feel like you're not making the progress you need to be making. Now that's something a lot of us can identify with. So when you lead with that, then that opens the door for deeper conversations. Well, let's talk about that. What are some of the challenges? Like, what do you feel like when that happens? And you're getting to the heart of emotion, so you actually can have that deeper dialogue and help them kind of overcome that challenge. And like, from an executive coaching point of view, if you show people how to do that, then they'll see you as an expert, and then they have a higher chance of hiring you. So same kind of thing with if you're running an agency, if you're whatever consulting you're providing, to share values. Like an accountant could just share tax tips, you know, something as simple as that, and saying, remember, always put their disclaimer, but call me for details after that. So
Sure. Well, I want to call out something that you just did. You know this, but something on top of empathizing, which part of your point is you're empathizing, but another part is that you're validating your presence and authenticity of empathizing with them by showing that you understand their problem specifically. And that's a very common direct outreach technique, which is used in cold calling or warmer calling. That's sort of an introductory to say, I've, based on my experience in working with people who are in your position, I have seen that this problem is occurring. And if you empathize with that, well, then you will appreciate that I'm working on this potential solution that I want to socialize with you. And you're empathizing, you're authentically, you're showing them that you're the right person to be talking with them. And then you're working with them collaboratively on introducing the solution, which is a really nice formula for building an authentic relationship that could lead to something valuable and profitable mutually.
yeah, one of the things that I often advise, my own teams and other clients, is when you're reaching out to someone, make sure you're really quick and direct about why they should even talk to you. But before you do even that, make sure you're talking to the right person. And so, an example, I remember talking to a writer, and they were trying to figure out how they get more writing clients. Now, that's a very competitive market because there are a lot of writers out there. So I said, well, if you're going to write something like a blog, if that's what you want to be, as a blog writer for audiences, why don't you find clients like this? So you said, where do they hang out, right? Go where they hang out. So
Totally.
first you got to know, do the people wherever they're hanging out, are they actually in need of it? So the idea here is find people who have started a blog but could not continue it, which means if you look at the dates of their blog postings, and you can just go type in any company. Let's say you do it for tech companies, and you can just type in a search term related to whatever kind of tech company you might be, and you get a list. Look to see if they've got a blog, and look to see their last post. I tell you, there's so many people who start blogs and just it's work, they can't continue it. So the last blog post might have been 6 months ago. So for something like that, you can send an outreach to the CEO and say, hey, I noticed you started a blog. I understand it's a struggle to keep up with it. Your last blog was posted on June 17th and it's December. And so what happens there, right? People can identify with the pain right there. They started it. They knew how much work it is. And then your offer is, I can actually write samples for you, or I can write a blog for you very consistently. And here's what our clients are saying about our abilities. And suddenly you've got a much stronger message than if you just sort of haphazardly started sending emails out. Hey, would you like me to write your blog for you? when you're focused on people who actually have that pain, knowing the pain being, I started it and I couldn't continue, therefore I stopped. But I know that tells you that they know that there's value in it, right? So little things like that I find work pretty well. So you can find this kind of thing in like all kinds of industries, right?
Absolutely. That's a great example.
Yeah. So can you share an example of maybe a client of yours? You don't need to give the name, obviously, but like what kind of challenges they have had in finding more clients, and what did they do? How did you advise them, and what kind of results did they get?
Sure, I appreciate that. And on the B2B side, something I've been thinking about a lot lately, which has worked for a lot of clients, is so of course we do a lot of funnels, and everybody has a different definition of what a funnel can be. But what I'm referring to is there's a landing page and a campaign, and then a series of automations and steps that go through on the from landing page to thank you page to appointment, to a nurture sequence of emails. And something that we've done for a number of clients who are in the B2B space is align them with charities who have distribution list and help them bring traffic through that funnel in return for something, whether it's a series of donations in return for any proceeds that may come from those efforts, or a lot of times they may be doing something like an event where the charity gets representation, and there's some mutually valuable reason for them to be distributed from their distribution list to the funnel.
Can you get more specific? Like, give an example of how that would actually work. How could someone take this and make this an actionable item for them to expand their reach?
Sure. So I think you can pick your favorite charity, and Giving Tuesday is coming up very soon, right? Mm-hmm. And you have the opportunity to choose one very consciously, whoever is going to resonate with your audience the most. You don't, if nothing comes to mind, then it might be who resonates most with you, as long as that's not a conflict of interest for the audience. And you reach out to them and say, listen, I'd love to help drive more traffic to your and awareness to your charity, and in return, I'd love it if we could come up with a mutual offer of some nature, and then in return for that, I'll be glad to make sure that the proceeds from that offering go to your charity. And the simple act of partnering with a charity and providing some kind of a donation in return for efforts could very well merit the work. So there's hopefully that gives some support. The first time I did this, which is not in the B2B space, but it was the most noteworthy story, was actually for a large salon in Pasadena. And we called this campaign the 26 Days of Caring. And during this month, every day that the salon was open, they supported a different charity. And so it was this big PR outreach where we contacted a charity for each day and got them to agree that we could represent them. And then that would become the day for that charity, and that's in the salon. And a new email would go out. Emails were sent from the charity's distribution list. And then the proceeds from that day went to something like 10%. I don't remember the exact number, went to that charity. And it got so much press and attention for the salon that it just became its own viral concept. And it's so simple conceptually, in that you pick a charity, you outreach them, decide what the offer is going to be that is going to work for you, and then you start a campaign.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that is a fantastic story, Karl. I love how so it generated a lot of business, a lot of awareness for the client, and so they were able to really get on the map. I take it that this is something they want to be doing every year, and you don't have to just do it at a certain time of year, like the end of the year, or so. You could just say, we're going to pick whatever months that have names, right? This is X month, this is Y month, and you could just pick that as a month and say, we're going to support all causes related to X or Y that month, and do that. That's a wonderful idea because you got other people marketing for you.
Right. Yeah, that it got hundreds of thousands of hits just that year alone, and there was celebrity charities involved. The Black Eyed Peas Foundation, from Apple the App Foundation. He's one of the members. Of course, American Red Cross and Tree People, Kids Save, Ronald McDonald House. There was 26, so I won't list them.
Yeah.
But it really worked well. And conceptually, I mean, if you take a marketing class, the 101, they'll show you what the hierarchy is, and at the top is a value is partnerships. And so if you want to get the most value and ascend the hierarchy of needs and values and possibilities, the partnership is a huge point of leverage, and charities constantly need help. So you have the opportunity to provide real impact and get increased exposure for yourself and for the charity, meanwhile doing some good and growing your business.
I like this because this is a scrappy marketing technique. You don't need a ton of money. You don't need an advertising budget. All you got to do is pick up the phone, and come on, everybody can do that, right? So we can pick up the phone and you talk, and you're supporting good causes too. So that's a great idea. What are some of the other scrappy ways that entrepreneurs can find clients?
Sure. Well, LinkedIn is such a massive resource, and the search engine aspect is why we get outreach by so many, potential spammers. But you have to remember that, like any tool, just because somebody uses it for bad doesn't mean that it's a bad tool. It just
Mm.
means that there are players in there that are using it badly. But the opportunity is practically endless because you can just choose a niche that works in line with your value and reach out to those folks. So I'm still really excited and try to, I've been doing more and more education lately on not to get overwhelmed. And I'm quite bullish on using LinkedIn as an outreach tool. And if we're talking about B2B, then we'd be remiss not to. What I've noticed is that a lot of business owners, especially those who, whether they're newer entrepreneurs or they're techie, I think we get a little bit overwhelmed and lost in the technology. There's so many, well, should we use a connective tool? What kind of automations should we use? Does it have to be LinkedIn Sales Navigator? Whereas the simple idea of rethinking, I keep thinking rethinking the hedgehog. If you're familiar
Mm.
with the terminology from, I
Good
think
to
it's from.
great.
Exactly. It's a classic of all of classics, right?
Hmm.
Which means you find what works and you keep doing it, basically, right? So if you have a client, then that worked, right? You built a relationship in that space. You have a pattern, and you were able to make that happen, build that connection, and provide some kind of value that they sold. So without question, whomever that person is falls into a certain category that you can find on LinkedIn. And so I'm kind of tying it back to this idea of simplified outreach, that you can mark who this person is, and it's a napkin strategy of who it is, what we want to offer them, how much time we can carve out, and how many people we should be able to outreach in that amount of time. The other thing that we're seeing, which is maybe a little bit more sophisticated, is if you are a list person, if you get into lists, then there you may think, okay, well, if somebody is, we have to get them to open, we have to get them to click, we have to get them to go to a landing page, we have to get them to fill out a form in order to provide value. However, in this busy world, if somebody even opens an email, there's an opportunity for you to contact them. So picking up the phone has become a theme for this conversation, and for getting back to basics in a way that is certainly a hedgehog strategy. I don't think that the phones have worked for all of us since we've been children, reaching out to whomever we reached out to in order to get value.
Yeah.
That's still just a great personal connection. So if you are a list person and you're sending outreach and somebody even opens an email, no click, then they're proving a few things to you. They're proving to you, A, they exist. The email was active enough that the open occurred. B, they had at least enough passive interest to open the email that you crafted with whatever offer you led with. So there's some potential qualification there. And C, they may actually remember you. Right. They may have some recollection of your name that just popped up. Oh, I just sent you a note, hope you don't mind. I thought that a phone call would be helpful here. So that's another strategy that I would suggest as a quick hit.
Hmm. And so these are nice outbound strategies too. So, that's what I find is sometimes people get too dependent on one strategy, it's just the inbound. You can actually grow a lot faster if you employ that outbound strategy. And you're right, people don't pick up phones. I look at mine all the time. I mean, how many spam calls do we all get a day? I just ignore them. If somebody is in my contact book and it shows up, then I'll answer the phone. Otherwise, nope. Sorry, not picking it up. But the emails is correct. And also the point of technology. I think a lot of companies look at, don't want to spend on this because I don't know if we're going to use this product and so on, but they actually shortchange themselves. You can really scale yourself a lot faster just by deploying some technologies. There's a tool I use in Gmail. It's called MailTrack. I think it's like $50 a year. There's a free version too, but they put a little tagline. I don't want everybody seeing the tagline. So I pay the $50 a year, and it tells me who opens the message and if there's a link in it, if they clicked on it. I mean, that's so simple. so cheap, and I think everybody should be using that. Granted, there's other stuff more sophisticated if you're using HubSpot or Aweber and some of these other tools where you can implement marketing automations. It'll track all those things. And I use those too. Even as an independent consultant, I would use them just because it provides you so much value. And so don't shy away from investing in technology to help scale yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what's the pecking order? You send an email out. If someone opens it, you would probably want to reach out to them. But if you got something in there that's of value, like a guide, a link to attend a webinar or something like that, if they click, that's a little higher priority too, right? Because they've actually taken action.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can certainly prioritize that. We have a few systems that I'll just simplify rather than getting folks lost in the tech. But with these colder outreach strategies, if somebody is opening an email, then we actually set up a notification for the sales representative. And that could be yourself, right? To say, okay, somebody opened an email. Now is a good time to contact them. And so they go into a call list. And by the way, this can work with LinkedIn as well. I think we forget that if somebody accepts your LinkedIn connection, that's a pretty warm connection. So it would not be out of the realm of reason to start that outreach in a way that's more significant than just saying, thank you for the connection. And just, you can actually give them a call or suggest that you would like to set up a call, or let them know when you'll be calling so they're available. But putting that connection request into a call list is something that we're also seeing. So those are two related answers.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's several tools out there that'll allow you to get contact information of somebody when they're on LinkedIn, because you can't easily get their email address. I guess there's LinkedIn Sales Navigator and there's other things too, but I think there's some Chrome extensions that will even allow you to capture or see what their email is so you can do an outreach. But just to tie back to that earlier point you've got to have that rhythm, right? You've got to say, all right, this week, and it doesn't have to be every day. I mean, if you can do it every day, that's wonderful. But honestly, you really need to set aside time every single week and say, I'm going to do outbound outreach for an hour, and this is what I'm going to do. And then you have to look back and say, well, what worked? What didn't work? What are people responding to? And how can I improve next week's outreach?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And there are LinkedIn, for example, I have a friend of mine, and I'll be happy to send you a link to this. You can add it to your show notes. He actually is the world champion Yu-Gi-Oh player, if you can believe that. Yu-Gi-Oh is a card game, and he's at some point he is or was the world champion, and he is a automation guru of really the highest order. And he created a data system called Parvenu. And Parvenu does what you described. It will sync up with LinkedIn and pull in the contact information for that person. Seamless is another one. Seamless is a very well known system that will do that, and they both have Chrome extensions. And won't talk about the ethical nature of any of these things. That's for the audience to decide what they're comfortable with. But there are systems that will also do LinkedIn outreach automatically as well. Of course, systems like Phantom Buster, which will connect to your LinkedIn and send specific numbers of friend requests per day.
I mean, I'm glad you brought up the nature of some of these tools, because I shy away from anything like that, because I feel like it takes away from the authenticity of what you're trying to do. And to me, like that initial outreach, especially if you're a consultant or an agency or something like that, that the very first impression you want to give them is something strong. And so like you can almost tell after you'll get a handful of these robotic type of outreaches, which one is genuine and which one is not. When I get somebody who wants to connect with me and say, hey, I read your blog on this topic. Oh, I liked your LinkedIn post on this. Or maybe they first started by commenting on my post with an intelligent comment, not something like interesting. Or another one I've seen is something to think about. And I remember catching what I think like one of my friends I saw, like, God, does not sound like his voice at all. Why am I seeing comments that he's sprinkling all over it? And I found he was using some tool. I'm like, dude, stop using the tool because it's making you look bad. So that's it's one of those things, your reputation is all you got. And if you, when you're on LinkedIn, when you're on Facebook, you're public,
It's true. I
Yeah.
think that there's something to be said for more of a semi-automation from your own voice. For example, the idea of coming up with a custom invitation might be daunting to some folks. However, let's take the same example of your potential executive coaching clients. Now, you may, once you've sort of defined something brief that works well, that speaks to them specifically, you might do a copy and paste, and then do a slight semi modification once you've looked at their profile, to validate that, okay, yeah, I do feel like this message is going to resonate with this person. I'll change the name. And that way you're just working smartly, right? So you don't have, a bot that is scanning and scraping and, just randomly sending messages, but you're working intelligently so that you can scale and semi-automate your efforts so that you can be more consistent.
Yeah, there's definitely a big distinction there, because if you're saying an outreach in your own voice and the message that you've honed is going to resonate with different types of audiences, different types of people, by all means, use that same message. You don't need to reinvent it. But I would be really mindful of just outsourcing the thinking of the messaging to someone without discussing what they're going to be saying with you. So that's, I think, kind of key, because you are your own voice, and people want to hear that. The authenticity has got to be real.
100%.
Yeah, Carl. So we've got some pretty clever ideas. One was the, reaching out to nonprofits and doing a daily broadcast with them and giving 10% of your proceeds for the day to that particular nonprofit. Love that idea. The other one is canvassing on LinkedIn to find people who could potentially be your target market. What are some of the other ways that a person could leverage their time? Because a lot of times when you're starting a company, you've got more time than you have money. And so what are some of the things that you could do? If you were starting a business today, how would you get your first client?
Well, apart from the ways that I described, because I think the first thing that I have done in previous efforts, which I think a lot of people do, is you prioritize who your contacts are, and you call the people who are the most relevant, and
Yeah.
and then they often become, either your first clients or your first referrals for that business.
Yeah, connect with your low-hanging fruit, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But other quick hits. So Calendly, I think, is a great tool. I think Calendly is such an easy technology to use that you can emulate what most people would have to create a sophisticated funnel and, an appointment funnel through HubSpot or something like that would be a much bigger lift than signing up for a free Calendly account and saying, hey, I'm booking 15-minute sessions where I'm going to do an audit of whatever the program is that you're working on. And I'll be happy to give it away for free, or, I'll even buy you a cup of coffee, whatever it's going to be, which we're seeing both of those things work for clients, by the way. And it's simple. The notion of, well, I'll, give me 15 minutes and I'll send you a $10 Starbucks gift card, no questions asked kind of thing, it's still resonating, and it's cheap when you consider the cost of a lead.
I remember our sales team. So we had a well-functioning team. I think it was about like 20 people, salespeople, and that was one of the things we allowed them to give away. They do use their discretion, but if they found a prospect that they thought would be a really good fit, $25 Starbucks gift card was actually a really popular way to drive meeting. And I think there's some of these other companies like Sendoso that will send gifts to people. You can like find a gift on Amazon and have it delivered to people too. And I remember, I think the personalization of what you give them is really important also. Like if you sent a Starbucks gift card to somebody who doesn't care for coffee, maybe that won't go too far. However, I remember getting a call from someone saying, "Hey, we'd love to send you a package of stuff." And it was like a mug with their logo on it. I don't want a mug with someone else's logo on it. But then someone said something different. I went to the University of Maryland. I love my alma mater. I'm one of the boards there. I'm a big just fan. I love the football. I love the basketball. Total Terp through and through. So
Yes.
this guy knew that because he saw it on my LinkedIn profile. He saw I was a Maryland Terp, and he sent me a travel mug with the Maryland Terps logo on it. Now that was touching. I took the call. I took his meeting. Couldn't help it because he actually researched me. And I knew that. And I was like, okay, if this guy's going to spend that much time, send me a nice travel mug that I am going to use because I love the Terps. That's the thing. So I think knowing what you're sending to people, nobody wants a shirt with your logo on it. They'll take something that matters to them. And I think the easiest way is find out where they went to college, send them that. Send them something related to their college with their logo on it. So that's a fast one.
You
Yeah.
know what I got the other day? I thought this was interesting. I have not experimented with this personally. However, I got a text message where somebody who I don't know who gave me $1. So they literally through Apple Pay texted me $1 saying there's 99 more of those if you take a call with me. And I thought
Wow.
that was a very bold move.
That's clever. Yeah, there's lots of different ways to just, and I like the way, these are just scrappy ways. Okay. Yeah. It was $1, and you send out 100 of those. Okay. It's $100. But honestly, some people are going to respond back. And if they're appropriately qualified, then you're actually going to get a meeting. And I think that's the really big thing that sometimes people miss. A lot of sales team members, a lot of startups will completely forget about how important it is to identify what your ideal client profile is. What are the buyer personas inside that profile? What are their pain points? Go where those people are hanging out and talk to them about those pain points. Now you've got an outreach. So then when you use these techniques to actually connect with them, which is really what they are, they're just techniques to connect with them. If they're the right buyer, then you're going to have a much better chance of success. But if you miss that other part of it, which is, am I actually reaching out to the right person? You're wasting your time and you're wasting your money.
Sure. And, there's another tactic if there's time that I think
Mm-hmm.
might be helpful to play off of what you just described, because I think, the ideal client profile, there's a reason why marketers talk about the ideal client profile so often, right? Because it's so key. It's such a critical foundation and the pain points, of course. But I think that sometimes folks get stuck with, well, I think so. So I'm going to do the best that I can, just move forward without much validation. And I think that the validation exercises that people hear are often a little bit, they can seem a little daunting, like, I'll survey 100 people, do a focus group on 10 of your prospects. There's a kind of a fun technique called the Trojan horse method, which leveraged a few times and seen clients leverage, which is quite interesting, where you look at who your customer is, and then you find out who their trusted advisors and partners, vendors are, and you start contacting those folks and attempt to get some validation behind who they are, what their pain points are, and what solutions they would actually be interested in. And you do something very interesting there. You are building relationships with people who could become referral distribution partners. You are getting validation, and often you're going to iterate based on what they say, even if it's just a tweak and an evolution of, okay, well, this offer might not work as well, but if we say this or don't say this, then it could improve the offering. And see, depending on what you offer, they may actually end up becoming clients. So it's a very interesting exercise to go through, and it's also it's a softer connection than an actual hard pitch. So it's an interesting exercise that I would put out there for your listeners.
Yeah. And I think, with all this, it's really important to be very genuine. I remember getting an email from one salesperson, and they were very persistent. I was ignoring their emails. And this was from one of those, it was actually a really large company. And I knew that company provided good sales training. So I was a little surprised when this happened. So this person sending me these emails, I'm ignoring them. Then they send me this interesting message that says, Raj, I've been trying to reach you. I'm just wondering, what advice would you have for a salesperson like me to actually connect with you? So when he said that, I was like, okay, let me see if I can help the guy out. And I'll tell him why I was ignoring him. First, I was completely not the profile of who he should be reaching out to. So I replied back and I said, just wondering if you've actually read about me to know what I'm interested in. I'm not running, in the past, I've run large teams, big departments. I'm not doing that at the moment. So I wouldn't really be an appropriate client to buy your product. So just like do that research. Radio silence after that. I'm like, what happened? And so it's interesting. You really got to know and to be really authentic and genuine. I think this guy was just blasting out these emails, and this one looked good because it sounded authentic and genuine. He sent it out, and he could care less. So it's really important.
And he missed a huge opportunity. If he had
Yeah.
formed a relationship with you, that could have been super beneficial for him. And he wasn't even able to respond. So I think
Right.
he bit off more than he could chew there.
Yeah, I could refer him to a lot of other. Know a lot of people in the IT in the tech industry. So yeah. Well, Karl, thank you very much for this enlightening dialogue. I love some of the tips that you shared, and I think they're very actionable things that people can put to use right away to help them drive more sales for their companies. How can people reach you, Karl, and Spiral Marketing?
Thank you, Raj. Well, I am, as some might have guessed, available on LinkedIn. That's Karl Boehm, KarlBoehm. And I can be found at spiralmarketing.com.
Thank you very much, Karl. Look forward to talking to you again.
My pleasure, Raj. Thank you. And likewise.